Hello everyone, we're back with another Osu modding review. This time it is on this set, and the modder is regisnalin. Whatever. I tried. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and look at these mods. Starting off, general big picture stuff. First red line is not on the downbeat. I already looked, and yeah, I agree. What I would be careful of is like, just check that that when you do move this over, which is fine, it aligns the downbeats, that this one no longer seems to need to be here. It may be necessary for Nightcore, but I'm not entirely sure that this red line. What did I do? Is it there actually? Oh, the BPM changes. Okay, so yeah, never mind. It does need to be there. Okay, I'm just being dumb. Okay. Moving on. So you don't have any general posts for this diff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and look through and see if I see anything that I maybe would have commented. So in this instance, they did this like stop, which is cool. But they didn't do the same thing here, which results in the 1/2 slider rhythm spam starting too early. It starts before the melody for it begins. So I would have said to like perhaps extend this slider and then have like a big spacing to this so that you can then do the same thing as you were doing elsewhere to get that contrast that you want for the melody here. The synth things. Similar to this. I will say that already off the bat, this looks like a very new mapper. And my concern is that the issues that are present for this kind of map are so obvious and so numerate, so abundant, that it's going to be very difficult for you to properly mod it for the purposes of a BN application. Because ultimately, with a new mapper, it's going to take so many rounds of feedback. A lot of these maps are just unmoddable in the sense that you can mod them, but you're never going to get it into a rankable state by modding it. And the mapper's just going to have to remap it as they get more and more experience, right? So that's my concern going forward, is that, if this is the kind of map that you submit, you need to do a really dang good job, because if you, kind of gloss over major issues that would leave the map in an unrankable state, then it's kind of not really demonstrating that you were able to identify those in the first place. Things like this micro overlaps, a more experienced mapper would be very unlikely to do that. And this kind of thing where they're starting the jumps too early, so they're ruining their emphasis on the jump patterns. You could probably comment about how there's not really that much contrast here, where the synth whatever comes in, the extra instrument, because there's a pretty notable change on these ones. So maybe they could switch to like a wide angle or a back and forth type of thing to mix it up. Some of these jumps in these verses do seem quite large for the verse, but I guess we'll see what the chorus does. And what's the difficulty range of this? It's 5-star, so this seems like big for 5-star, which is like an insane diff. I mean, this is like an extra, but you know, you get the idea. And this is the exact same pattern as here. This one's NC'd more. But this one's supposed to be that transitionary measure, so it should be probably more intense relative to this one. But it's got the same movement. This is like one of the worst ways that anyone could ever map 1/3, 1/3 rhythms. I really hate it. I wouldn't mod it necessarily, but I also wouldn't nominate this map because of this, so... These, the spacing here is super big for this section. Like, this should be, like, way closer. And I absolutely would mod that. And then we're doing the repeat thing again. We did the repeat thing over here. But the section's changed now. So we don't want to use the exact same rhythms. Like the rhythms are much more active here with these claps. So definitely make a suggestion about sectional contrast here, how this is a different section we need that's more intense. Or it's not... Don't make it about whether it's more intense. I think it's more intense, but I wouldn't necessarily make it about that. I'd make it about they're different, so they should be mapped in a different way. If the mapper thinks that this is calmer for some reason, then, you know, they can map it in a more calm way, right? But they are definitely different. And then this build-up doesn't really do a build-up. It's just kind of big from the beginning. Like, if we look at the distance snap, it's using, like, 3, 4, 3.5, 3.5, it looks like. But they did increase the SV. So that one's probably about, like, 4... This one's a little higher. So like there's a slight buildup maybe in spacing, but it's not noticeable, and it's not it doesn't match the sort of the buildup that the song does. So I would definitely make a suggestion to, like, hey, come over here and, like, make a much more gradual buildup to really highlight that contrast in the song, to really capture, like, the fact that this is a transition, a building up phrase into the more intense part. This has no impact because the spacing is so small. This would be really cool if they'd space this out. Like, they could maybe make this one low spacing. But the slow slider doesn't have any contrast because there's no big movement here. You know, these types of things, these types of, like, subjective improvements, you know, if you can call them that, they're fine to mod. What you just have to be careful is that you don't make it seem like it's required, right? Like, I'd say, hey, you know, it looks like you're trying to emphasize this too by having the slowdown. Unfortunately, because there's not enough spacing, the player doesn't really feel that. So if that's the case, then hey, if you space this out, you get that effect that you're looking for. Like, I would sort of put it like that, right? Where, you know, I'm trying to see what the mapper is trying to do, and let the mapper decide if I understood their intentions. Like here, for example, where they kind of have it relatively intense right here, And then they're going to go into this, and it's not that much more intense. Like, there's a big spacing, but, like, the actual, now we're going into held sliders. So, it would be more exaggerated if they, like, stacked it or something like that. Okay, so this section is different. It became more intense. What did the mapper do? They added 0.05 of an SV multiplier on it. So, like, what I would suggest to them is, hey, 0.35 or 0.05 on a 1.5 base slider velocity is not going to be felt by anyone. Nobody can tell. So, really you want to make that like a 1.5 or like a 0.15 or 0.2 multiplier at least. In addition, right? Make this like 0.5, and then people would be able to feel that. But currently, that 0.5 or 0.05 change is not being felt, despite there's a significant change in the intensity here. And, the spacing hasn't changed at all. And neither has the rhythm. So the slowdown is nice, but this is way too big of a spacing there. Like, there's no need for that. Like, at most, like they can maybe make it big out of this because there's a big clap, and you have the slider leniency. But going from this to this is just really extreme for that 1/2 gap, and I don't think the song calls for it. It's kind of a slowdown part. Like, huge 1/2 spacing, which is like a lot bigger than they use for these 1/2s, like these slider patterns in the chorus. A lot of these jumps are actually just straight up bigger than what's in the chorus. Oh god, what's this? Oh, that's awful. Oh no. It's a completely different, like, sound entirely. Why is it just continuing the jumps? Like, at least there's a rotation change, but, like, it shouldn't feel the same at all. It's so much different. Like, maybe if they want to keep that triangle jump pattern, like, something like this might work, but currently keeping that spacing, like, basically the same, it doesn't hit. So, okay, I'm coming back here. Like, it is consistent with how it's mapped over here. So it's not really a consistency issues or anything like that. But I do think there's some contrast issues where, like, the verses are overly intense, and it's drowning out what the chorus could be. And then there's contrast issues between sections, like I talked about how the second part of the chorus is not sufficiently more intense relative to the first part as the song changes. Then there's also things you can talk about with, like, patterning design, right? How, all these patterns are exactly the same copy-pasted arrangements, rather than, something more dynamic, right? We're just doing this constantly. You could talk about aesthetics, right? Visual spacing is fine to talk about if you're careful with it, right? Like, you don't want to push the idea that you have to do it, but, this is clearly a new mapper, so you should treat them like a new mapper. Um, so, things like this. Hey, if you're doing a parallel slider relationship, don't make them different shapes. That would help quite a bit. um, but yeah, I think ultimately this is just not gonna be a suitable set for an application. But anyway, you did identify that you would not nominate it, to be fair. So that's good. I also had to look at your mods. Okay. So I am concerned that you had no general posts on this. Okay, let's take a look. And it would be nice if you continue the flow with the previous two sliders on this node with a placement like this. Well, the problem with this image is it doesn't really show the heads. Like, I don't know the head. So you would probably want to change the AR for that. What diff is this? What? Oh, nice if you continue to flow with my previous two sliders. Oh, I see. I would have worded this differently. Like, hey, just move it at the bottom of, at the bottom, because that's the direction that the pattern goes. Something like that. And yeah, I agree. That's actually a kind of a decent suggestion. But saying flow, like this flow term is vague. That's kind of, I think, the problem is, different people can interpret flow in different ways. And, somebody might very well interpret this as it flows upwards, right? Because that's where when you're following the slider, you flow upwards. So, yeah, be careful there. I think it's supposed to be overlapped like you did with the 1-1 gaps. I mean, it's just like a broken stack? Like, are you saying it's a broken stack, or are you saying it's like this? I wouldn't mod something like this. This is so irrelevant. Seems like you tried to make the 120-degree pattern, but didn't quite execute it very well. So, this type of thing happens so much in the map that make a general post out of it, right? Like, it's not an isolated instance where this happens. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'd remove the NC from these to make so the NC takes place every white tick. Yeah. That does make it better. Cool. A little bit too much space considering how calm the song is. Yes, I did mention that, so I'm glad that you did. Control G for circular flow in the previous slider. This is such an irrelevant suggestion. Like, it could be that they wanted the sort of, anti-flow, if you want to call it to that, to emphasize this note. So, like, there's not a reason given for why they should do this. You're just saying, you can Control G this. But, like, why? Why do they need to do that? Why should they do that? Why might they want to do that? What about the map and the mapper's choices within the map lead you to believe that that's the better option? So be thinking about that when you're making your suggestions. Because if you're lacking, like this kind of thing would be... I mean, you wouldn't get rejected from the BN for something like this, but it's certainly not helping your application. Okay, I wouldn't do the perfect overlap in a jump pattern since you only use them on 1-1 gaps. You use a lot of partial overlaps in jump patterns. Make a 50% overlap, which are ugly as heck. So I don't think it matters. And the reason is that this is a 5-star map, and it is perfectly playable. And when you factor in that this is a whole heck of a lot longer of a gap, right? So the overlap is a 2-1 gap in time distance, whereas the other instances of the overlap, this was a 1-1. And this one was a much bigger one. And this one was a 1-1 gap. So like the fact that it's a 2-1 gap means that it's not a reading hazard, because by the time that they actually see 4, 2 is already faded. And they should be high enough skill to play this that they shouldn't be confused by that pattern. So yeah, I would not have said this. And I don't think that it's a consistency matter either, because yeah, maybe they do some overlapping type shenanigans in their jump patterns, but like, for example, this overlap, this is like, who cares? Nobody's gonna ever notice this overlap because there's a whole 3 beat gap between those. Yeah, I don't think it matters whatsoever. Okay, Control G these two so that the becomes sharp. Okay, I see. You want to Control G these ones. I guess. But like, what's wrong with the linear movement? I am glad that you mentioned to nerf the spacing. I agree. But I don't think that that's like a part of the same mod at all. Like, that might be something you might want to consider having a separate mod for. I guess it's fine because it's relating to the same thing, but yeah, I agree. This is definitely overspaced. Cool. So you mentioned like the really, really egregious ones. So that's good. Okay. I would have liked this because like this type of spacing issues that it has are kind of occurring throughout the difficulty side. I like to have seen a general post that attempts to address it and improve the map holistically. Because I think like if you look at your mods here and if they go and apply these isolated instances of these mods, is the map any better than it was before? Yeah, it's a little bit better, but is it rankable? I don't think it is. I don't think it's rankable after. And I don't think it's overall quality, right? It doesn't suddenly become a good map. It becomes slightly better, perhaps, but it doesn't actually become anything. Still new mapper map, basically. Okay, so let's take a look at the insane diff. Oh wow, that's some spacing. I guess it is 160 BPM, so I have to factor that in too. This is quite big for an insane. It feels like very similar in spacing to the top diff. We'll see. But this is like the first verse. the emphasis here is really wonky. Like, this section feels very intense. See, this one does actually separate the two sounds on the top diff and I don't think I would have done it this way, but are they using the same SVs? No, not quite. Not quite using the same ones. Like, this section is so spaced. And it's all sort of spaced the same, too. Like, what's up with that? We'll see if you mention this. Again, I haven't looked at your mods, so I don't know if you've already done that. This was a much better way of mapping that. Oh my goodness. But it is spaced really high. Bruh. I have no idea why that needs to be like that. It's kind of the same thing where the rhythm is different and we're just repeating the same thing. This one, the SV change is more obvious this time. So there is that. I mean, this is like the drop. And how does it compare to the verse? Approximately the same, it looks like. Some of the spacing is so big. Okay. Okay, I mean, same sort of story as the top diff. When one pauses on this diff do not relate very well with the spacing used in them. And it creates a readability issue, which will be hard. I completely disagree. I mean, it's an insane diff, so variable, time distance to quality is something that's used as a regular element at this point. Like, this would be maybe too much for a hard diff, and certainly for a normal diff, but for an insane diff, having weird time distance to quality is not a reading hazard. Now, what it is freaking weird, right? It doesn't really represent the song necessarily, right? But because then it makes these 1-1 gaps feel like nothing because there's just no spacing. And it makes the 1/2 gaps feel way too big, as I think they are. So there's that. But I don't think it's a reading hazard at all. And I think AR8 actually makes it easier. It's kind of a skill that people lose over time when they... but I don't think that like you should be making statements about time accessor quality relative to AR and whether AR9 or 8 is easier or harder. When that kind of statement is accurate is when there's lots of overlaps or lots of objects on the screen, in which case it can be easier with the higher ARs to determine, if there's two objects close to each other, which one comes first, because there's just less objects on the screen with the higher AR. But in this case, I don't think that really applies because it's not a very dense song. And it's certainly not going to be a reading hazard, AR8 versus AR9. They should be able to easily distinguish that. Okay, since you're emphasizing this with... Oh, okay. So since you're emphasizing this with a higher spacing and flow change, might as well do it on 5-2. Huh? What? How? How is he going to emphasize the flow change on 5? Like by doing this? You want like this? Like... I mean, again, you have to change the AR so you can actually see where the orientation of these sliders are. Because it could easily be interpreted that you're trying to have them do this or this. And both of them are very different. I also disagree that this actually helps because by making a flow change twice, you're actually not flow changing at all, right? Or you're not emphasizing anything at all because now the flow change has no significance. And no longer has any form of emphasis because you haven't established the standard, the norm to then deviate from. In this case, we've established a clockwise rotation that is then broken here into a counterclockwise rotation. That is then going to have some significance, the emphasis on this object. This one is already emphasized by the fact that it's a rhythm change. It's back to sliders. So like we had sliders, then we had circles, and then going back to the slider is going to have some emphasis there. So 5 is already emphasized by that. It doesn't need more. Whereas 6 does need it because you're starting from a slider. You're just going slider to slider. So to emphasize 6, you have to do other things than rhythm. Okay. Section has overall too high spacing for its song intensity. This seems like a general post. This should be on your general timeline, your general tab. The song is this part is very calm, and still some spacings are equally or more spaced than the spacings in the key eye. Yeah. Yep. So I agree. I think it kind of is maybe more applicable to like more of the map than you maybe think, but yeah, that's good. I agree. IMO, this could be 2 1-1 sliders to just differentiate it. From yeah, I agree. I think you should extrapolate this to this one over here. Where was it? These ones. I think you should extrapolate that logic to these. But yeah, I agree in those two cases there, and ones you've identified. Besides this being on the chorus, and with suggestions like this, and it's like a general rule of thumb, be careful about jumping right to the solution, especially for a newer mapper. Well, I mean, I think for any mapper, really. State what the problem is first. The problem is that, in this case, you have, within one part of the song, you use the same rhythm for two completely different sounds, and as a result, there's no contrast. That's the problem, right? What's the solution? Well, one of them could be to make them two 1-1 sliders. That's one possible solution. But the way you've written this, you haven't told the mapper or shown them like what the actual issue is, so they can't identify that themselves. To them, it looks like you're saying that the repeat is the issue and the only solution is the 1-1, when that's not really the case. There's other possible solutions. And if they had known what the issue was, like, so that they can then resolve that issue in their own way, if they don't like your suggestion, right? So if they don't like the two 1-1s, they just decline your suggestion. Whereas if I say, hey, there's a contrast issue here, one idea is to make them two 1-1 sliders. Instead, if the mapper doesn't like the two 1-1 sliders, well, they still have to address the contrast issue that you mentioned, and maybe they come up with a different rhythm that they like. So you kind of open that up. Besides this being on the chorus, I think you should nerf the spacing a little bit, because right now it's overkill. Yeah. Yeah. This could be more spaced. Downbeat in the jump pattern. I don't think it needs to be. I don't think this needs to be more spaced because there's already contrast. There's already emphasis on the circle because we're going from slider to circle. So the clicking gets more active there. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be more spaced. You're really not stating what the issue is with it anyway. Like, you're saying it could be more spaced because it's the downbeat, but does it need to be more spaced because it's the downbeat? And if so, why does it need to be more spaced? Otherwise, I just say, nah, I think it's fine. I don't want to, I'm too lazy to change it, whatever it is, and I just reject it. Reject the suggestion, and it works just fine, right? Because you haven't provided any, like, justification for why your post matters. So be careful there. Okay, onto the hard diff. Difficulty setting wise, 7.6 with an AR8. Okay, that's interesting. Alright. So this is going to be probably a low-end hard. We'll see. Oh. It just completely didn't map to 1/3. That's not good. So, like, already what I'm thinking is that there's a spread gap between the hard and the insane, because the hard is just so simplified and it does nothing with spacing, whereas the insane does a ton with spacing, like extra level difficulty stuff with spacing. So that's what I'm thinking here. This NC spamming is really kind of confusing. This is so much more readable if they do this. Okay. So this is actually pretty okay overall for what it is. I think. Let me actually look a little bit better. What's the SV changes in this? Pretty minor. It's like a 1 times. Okay. So like the verses use a lot more of these 1-1 gaps. The choruses don't use as many 1-1 gaps. They just use like longer sliders instead. Lots of sliders in the chorus. But there's that contrast as a result. I think the SV does enough of a good job to make them feel different, despite like sort of the densities being a little bit wonky. The verse is pretty dense. But I'm kind of thinking that the SV is making it okay. Okay, we'll see what you said. No general post. I don't think I had one either. Did I? I cannot remember now. Oh, yeah, I didn't for this. Okay, it was a spread issue that I was mentioning. So, basically what I'm saying is that you didn't mention the spread issue. That's not good. The difference of the SVs on these sections is a little too high for a hard diff. No, I disagree. I think it's fine. Yeah, no, it's fine. I think it's totally fine for a hard. Okay, moving on. Hard diffs are supposed to be the introduction to insane diff level stuff, right? So in the insane diffs, you manipulate SV a lot. Especially important if within the set, SV is manipulated very heavily in the insane diffs, because you kind of want to have that bridge within the set to difficulty elements that are present in the higher difficulties. So if you have like an insane diff that manipulates spacing a ton and is really, really complex spacing wise, lots of variations and things, then having a basic hard diff with that's purely distance snapped doesn't really spread very well in something like that. So that's kind of what you would think about, what I think about. Ki feels a little bit underwhelming considering its density when compared to the other verses. Okay, I should probably look at the diff first. Okay. Make sure that they do not NC objects by themselves. Like that's very confusing to read. Should be NC'd like this. Or it could be NC'd like this. But I generally don't recommend ever NCing things like in like 1 or 1-2 combos. Combos should not be too short or too long. For a normal diff. Oh, and then I was going to mention that, like, one of the things you can look at is like how do they do with complex rhythms between like the top diff, and the top diff mapped it, admittedly passively, but with like huge spacing for some reason, and then the hard diff just didn't map it at all. So that's one sort of trick you can compare those things when you're determining a spread gap. Interesting. So, what I think is very strange is that the denser stuff that was in here, like where are all of the 1/2 rhythms in the key. Like there was never any instances of doing this in the key. But we have it in like the very calm verse. Like these are the most intense parts. Also like contrast. What the heck? Using the same exact rhythms. Seriously. And this is wrong. Whatever the hell is going on here is definitely wrong. Okay, let's see what you said. Ki feels underwhelming. Yes. I would like some more specificity here, because again, new mapper, how are they going to apply this, right? Like that is very vague, it's unspecific. So I want more of that. Screenshots are very, very good. Include those. And yeah. Okay. Unstack these two. I think it's totally fine, frankly. It's the first object in the map. And it's not like a reading hazard, so... Like, they want to emphasize this where the movement starts, so by not having that, like, by not having it stacked, you'd have to start the movement before it, and then you'd lose the emphasis on that too. Which is where the synth starts, so, yeah, I disagree with that. This being the same rhythm as... this... There is a lot of 1/2 repeats. Or 1/1 repeats. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Yeah. But then, your suggestion is to 2 1/2 circles plus circle, or 2 1/2 sliders plus circle. So then you go into this. So you're having 1/2 slider into another slider. So then this slider would be less emphasized. It wouldn't be very significant at all. And it would also kind of like ruin the emphasis here anyway by having the slider here. So I think that this suggestion also requires that you change this to something else. Maybe like this. Let's stack it. That'd be cool. I could get behind that. Okay, maybe do a 1/2 reverse. I think maybe a better suggestion would be to like do this. Oh, it's a 1/2 reverse you were suggesting, like this. Okay. Feels really weird to ignore this then. So like you'd have to probably have them do like that. Okay. I guess it's fair enough. I don't really care that much. No hit sound on this part for some reason. I have not been listening with effects, so... Yeah, good catch. Good catch indeed. Okay. And do 2 circles instead. I don't think it's necessary. I think that the tails have enough emphasis. I actually like passive emphasis, so it's cool. I understand why you made the suggestion, so it's like fine. We missed the unstat, like this missnap thing right here. So this is a problem. And assuming that it's supposed to be shorter. Actually, let me check that I didn't screw that myself. Oh, okay. I screwed that. Okay, never mind. You're safe. I screwed that one up on accident, I guess. Okay. Yeah, so you caught the sort of contrast-related issue here, so that's good. Overall, I think the low diffs were pretty okay. It's the high diffs that are really low quality. So, but yeah, I don't think I noticed too much that, I mean, you can look back and, remember what I said. I don't remember what I said 30 minutes ago, so, oh, yeah. The main thing you miss is the spread gap between the hard and the insane. The problem is that the normal is super low end, and the hard is like very easy because it has to spread from a very easy normal. But then you end up with like this insane that just goes in freaking ham for no reason, honestly. So assuming that they try to keep this insane and don't remap it, which, is what it is, then you're going to need a hyper diff, something to bridge it, or a lower insane. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense, and if you have any questions, just let me know. And for anyone else that's watching, if you have maps or mods you want me to give feedback on or my thoughts, just send them over. I'm happy to do that. Cheers!